South Africa continues to reel from violence that left over 200 people dead. Investigators now believe the riots were premeditated. The looting and riots were triggered by the arrest of former President Jacob Zuma. They then spread to Gauteng province, the country's main economic hub. President Cyril Ramaphosa visited KwaZulu-Natal, where the protests began. President Ramaphosa said the riots were an attempt to hijack South Africa's democracy. Officials have yet to release the names of those currently under investigations. However, authorities allege that those loyal to Zuma planned the violence. The ruling ANC party is currently split between supporters of Ramaphosa and those loyal to President Zuma.
There are long queues at malls and food stores in KwaZulu-Natal and parts of Gauteng as shortages are starting to hit the two provinces. People in communities hit by looting say they are running out of basic essentials like bread, milk and chronic medication. Panic buying across neighborhoods in Gauteng has seen popular grocery delivery services buckle under pressure. But the Consumer Goods Council of South Africa warns against panicking.
The food value chain is doing a lot in terms of ensuring that food reaches people. And we do have various NGOs in place in order to reach the critical communities where we have learned to maneuver around getting food to people. So all of those critical learnings of getting food to people that was utilized during the COVID situation would be plugged in to ensure that that is done.
The council acts as the representative body of the entire consumer packaged goods industry. Sitati says lessons learned while dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic are coming in handy.
I think COVID has taught us a lot to have contingency measures in terms of our sourcing of raw material and also our processing to ensure that with whatever that can hit us, we are able to proceed and feed the nation.
Meanwhile, Brand South Africa says the looting and the destruction has had a detrimental effect on the South African nation brand.
The disorder started with protests against the arrest of former President Jacob Zuma, but soon degenerated into deadly and destructive rampages in KwaZulu-Natal and Gauteng provinces.
The brand promise itself remains. We are still who we are at the core. What has been compromised is the image of the brand at this point in time, and that is something that we need to manage. So what we would need our audiences and our core target market to understand is the fact that we remain a largely peaceful and stable environment.
Brand South Africa is an entity charged to promote the nation's brand image and reputation. Yolisan Jamila for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Well, for a closer look at this, I'm joined by Gabriel Kraus, a socio-political analyst at the Institute of Race Relations. He's joining us from Johannesburg. Gabriel, thank you for joining us on the program. Now, with food shortages being felt in parts of the country, what is the economic impact of the ongoing violence?
Still fires being put out and debris being picked up, supply chains being restored, it's impossible to yet have a complete tally of the economic damage that's been done. But BUSA Business Unity South Africa has estimated at least 5 billion rands damage to retail. Intellidex has estimated about 50 billion rands damage to the economy as a whole. To give a sense of perspective, that is about 1% of annual gross domestic product in South Africa. So the damage is huge. 200 malls at least have been looted, hundreds more shops burnt down completely. It is a dire situation, and I think especially when you consider that 1.4 million jobs were lost last year during the lockdown and the pandemic, 2 technical recessions in 2018, 2019, and decades of lost economic growth before that, putting us in a situation where most youth are unemployed in South Africa. This damage comes at an impossible time to deal with that in a humane and economically sustainable way, and yet we must.
Well, let's bring in CGTN's Angelo Coppola, who's been following the rioting and the developments in South Africa. Angelo, can you give us the latest on the violence across South Africa?
Well, Well, the official update, Beatrice, was given by the President on Friday night, and that was when we heard about the 212 deaths that are related to arson and to the looting. 180 of those people are in KwaZulu-Natal, 32 in Gauteng. We do understand that the police services are investigating 131 murders and have opened 81 inquest dockets into those deaths that are related to the unrest. And a couple of hours after Ramaphosa's speech, at around midnight, in fact, on Friday night, Saturday morning, a task team of police, Metro cops and troops raided 3 men's hostels in the Johannesburg area. Those were considered to be staging areas for the looters. So they went in there, the authorities, to try and find out what's going on. We don't have any detail on the number of people that were arrested there or what was uncovered or discovered. The authorities do say that they have the matter under control, though, at the moment. So, like I said, 212 people confirmed killed and 118 KwaZulu-Natal, the others, the 32 in the Gauteng area, Beatrice.
Well, Gabriel, you talked about, that the country was already facing, a recession from last year because of the pandemic. There have been job losses. So we've seen a lot of images of looting in various towns in South Africa. How have businesses been affected, and what do they need to do now to recover?
I mean, businesses have been crushed. South Africans, businesses and private persons have been over indebted for years. And the recession, by the way, is not just from last year. It was 2018 and 2019. Lawlessness has been on the up too. Before the pandemic, we had 10 violent protests per day on average, according to the South African police, which is 3 times higher than a decade before. I think what businesses need to do is diagnose why South Africa was so ready to burn. Zuma might have been the spark, but it's the basic conditions of poverty and unemployment that have made this country into a tinderbox. And to address that, businesses are going to have to lobby, I think, for legal changes that allow people to protect their property in the face of a government that wants to take away all firearms for the purposes of self-defense, changes to protect property rights in the face of a government that is proposing expropriation of property without compensation on a national scale. And this is just a sort of minor thing that we've seen right now compared to that. And changes to laws that chase away foreign investors. For example, the race-based policies that chase away investors from Asia, Europe, and America. Investors that certainly have money that South Africans need to deploy right now to rebuild their businesses, to reestablish supply chains, and to get the wheels of the economy turning again. So I think business is going to have to try and avoid the kind of faction-fighting internal ANC narrative that is important for police to investigate in terms of who instigated this, but not important for addressing the basic fundamentals that make South Africa such a poor and underdeveloped country over the last decade. That needs to be turned around for businesses to thrive. All
right, Gabriel Grouse and Angelo Coppola joining us there from Johannesburg. To you both, thank you. Well, as South Africa emerges from a week of unrest, the country will today turn its attention to the annual Mandela Day efforts. The late Nelson Mandela led a revolution during 4 decades against a racially oppressive regime, becoming the first democratically elected president in 1994. On the 18th of July every year, citizens of the country dedicate 67 minutes of their time to good deeds in honor of the former statesman. This year, however, the country faces a mammoth task as it recovers from the chaos which has demolished food supply chains in parts of the country. CGTN's Julie Shire reports.
It will be a Mandela Day like no other. South Africans are scrambling to get food to disaster-hit areas, mainly in KwaZulu-Natal, after days of looting, arson and vandalism. The need for food in other communities is also dire since the COVID-19 lockdown was enforced almost 18 months ago. Cape Town-based charity Ladles of Love has made every day a Mandela Day.
We expanded exponentially. We went from a little soup kitchen doing about a ton of food a week. Within 3 months, we were doing 50 tons of food a week. We're serving around 30,000 people a day with food. We send these bulk supplies we've got about 300 soup kitchens around the peninsula. They cook the food and they serve it to the communities. And we're on over 18 million meals that we've served since COVID began.
Ladles of Love is encouraging South Africans to lend a helping hand where they can. The community-based organization is aiming to break a Guinness World Record by collecting 90,000 tins of canned beans covering 6.7 kilometers.
These cans can actually supply our beneficiaries. We have 125 and we're feeding hundreds and thousands of people a day. And these cans can add value and bulk into their pots.
Every Thursday we come here and we have goods, products given to us. We go back into the community and serve a number of people, even up to the average of 300-400 people that we serve with the food that we get here.
But with supply completely cut off in some areas due to unrest, there is concern, however, this will impact on charitable efforts.
The millions that have so little are going to have even less now. And that is what makes me truly sad. My concern is that we're going to feel the ripple effect of that as well, because a lot of our stuff comes from Durban. And so our supply is already starting to tell us there's going to be shortages. So we're going to probably have to cut back on supplies, because if prices go up, we need to reduce the parcels so that we can keep the food going out.
Communities across South Africa usually open their hearts on Mandela Day by giving their time, money and other donations. They now have to put together one of the biggest humanitarian efforts this country has ever seen to ensure millions don't go hungry in the next coming weeks. Julie Shire, CGTN, Cape Town, South Africa.